Welcome back to another episode of the 70 Cutlass with the LS engine swap. Let me rephrase that. I'm a bit optimistic. I feel we have crested the hill. Chad feels we've got a lot more work ahead of us. But today, Chad, what are we going to do with this engine today?
So today we're actually going to try to test fit it in there. So we've been talking a lot about getting it prepped and everything, and in the last episode you might have seen us do that. We did the oil pan and a few other sensors. But today we are going to actually try to test fit it in there, see if those engine mounts line up that we worked on. We got a few other goodies as far as like mating the transmission to the engine that we have to show you guys. So that's really what we're going to be doing today. And other than that, I think we can just go ahead and just jump right into that. So let's go ahead and get to it. All right, so like I just mentioned, we are going to try to get this engine into the 70 Cutlass today, just test fitting. But the first thing we're gonna need to do is get this engine off this engine stand. This engine has not left this engine stand in, I would say, almost 3 years, and I'm ready for it to come off here. So once we get it off there, we need to get the flex plate put back on. We also have a couple of adapters, like I mentioned, going to the Turbo 350 that we need to test fit and understand how they work. They're a little bit interesting, especially the adapter plate that goes from the two. But we first need to get this off this engine stand. So we're gonna go ahead and get the engine hoist over here. We're gonna pick it up, and then we'll re-pick back up once we throw up the flex plate back on. So let's get to it. So the way that we're going to go ahead and get this engine up on the engine hoist is by using this new engine hoist, or I think it's called a engine leveler. I picked this guy up off Amazon, so if you guys are interested in something like this, make sure to pick this up. I'll have the link down below. It's going to make putting the engine in so much easier because you can tilt this thing back and forth. And I've never used one before, but I know this is going to be a lot better. So I'm going to open this guy up and hook her up. Ooh, that looks nice.
All right, first thing Chad is going to do here, he's got the flex plate in hand. He's going to line it up, and then he's going to Loctite these bolts into place, as you should, and then we'll properly torque them down as well.
I think the torque on these, we got the flywheel or flex plate. We got 74 foot-pounds, so I'm going to go ahead and start these bolts, and then we'll torque them down to 74 foot-pounds.
So Chad is getting these snug down with the impact, and as he said earlier, we're going to come back in with a torque wrench and torque them down to 74 foot-pounds.
All of them?
That's it. That's all of them.
Perfect. So that flex plate is back on. I think the next thing we're going to need to do is walk you guys through what we have for accessories today. So let's do that. So now with the flex plate on, torque down to spec, 74 foot-pounds, it's looking great. And we're going to move on to the next piece we have here. So actually I'm going to introduce you to each one of the parts. And the first part we're going to show you is these new dowels. So these dowels right here are, stock application. We're going to need a little bit longer. And Jegs offers them. Also, a lot of other brands offer them, but they're just a little bit longer. Actually, they're pretty good size. But we have a lot of option to push them through as much as we want, and they'll fit into the transmission as well. We need these because we're going to be running that extra little plate in between the engine and transmission, which will adapt it from the Turbo 350 to this LS engine. So this is part number 22005, and that's from Jegs. So we'll tackle that here in a minute. The next thing that we're going to need is this LS1 pilot spacer. So going from a LS1 to a Turbo 350, you're going to need a spacer that goes from this crankshaft to the torque converter. So this guy right here, I already opened it up because I wanted to test fit it. It's a little bit of a tight fit, but we do want to clean out this area here. So I already did that. The smaller side of this fits in there. It's a tight fit. We'll probably give a little bit of a dead blow shot on it or rubber mallet shot on it just to get it to go in there. But once it's in there, it should stay. And then this is the side that goes into the torque converter because we're using the just regular Turbo 350 torque converter that we had on the car already. And then the third thing that we have is we have the engine to trans adapter from Chevy to Buick Oldsmobile Pontiac. So since we're using a Buick Oldsmobile Pontiac transmission, we do need an adapter. So this is the one that they offer here. This is how it's going to go, something similar to that right there. And with looking at this, I wonder if we're going to take that flex plate back off again because we might need to sneak that down in between there. Not 100% sure, but if we have to, we're going to do that first before we put on that spacer and the dowels. But we'll go ahead and take a look at this and we'll get right back to you. So as me and Kyle were just conversing real quick, we have a game plan for this. And the game plan is we're going to go ahead and remove these dowels first thing. With the dowels removed, we should have enough room to slide this in all the way through and to be able to get that to go in. So Kyle's going to go ahead and start. He's just taking a punch and a blow hammer and just going to try and knock those out. And just like that, there's one. We'll come over and do the other one.
Almost fell over.
Squeeze! And just like that, those are out, and now we'll be able to squeeze that guy in here, hopefully. Just like that. And there's a few bolts that we need to get bolted up with this out of the engine bay. It's this one right here, and this one right here, and here, obviously on the other side. So those bolts are supplied. They come in a little baggie, and we'll go ahead and just put those in there. The other bolts that you're going to use are the ones that come from the transmission or engine that were already on the vehicle. So we're going to go ahead and put those in, and then we'll see where we're at. All right, so quick modification we need to do with this adapter plate. Now, you're supposed to put these nuts facing towards the front of the engine. So it's going to go like that. If we slide this in here, like so, and line it up, there is a bolt hole right here where we don't need that nut, and we can utilize it. On this side, we don't have a bolt hole. We have an empty passage here. Now, this is where the top of the trans goes into, and we're going to need to utilize that bolt hole, which is great because we have it. So what I'm going to do is just take the little angle grinder, and I'm just going to snap off these welds here, and we won't need that anymore. It will just be a pass-through just like everything else. This will be our only nut that we'll need to use on that transmission to the engine adapter plate. So I'm going to do that, and while I do that, Kyle's going to go ahead and tackle something else. I'll explain to you what he's going to do.
Make sure you wear your safety glasses, Chad.
You got it, man.
Do it. All right, so while Chad's doing that, I'm going to knock in this spacer, just give it a few little love taps with a rubber face mount. Make sure not to mar up the face of it or any of the flanges. So we'll knock that in real quick.
All right, so I went ahead and zipped that off, and after doing a quick mock, it's not exactly right. So when we put it up here, line it up with where the dowels are going to be, it's a little high, I believe, the engine part of it at least. Do you have another one? There we go. So you can see here, it's not going to line up exactly. If we wanted to, we could always drill out this. Actually, it might not be a bad idea. We could do that, but if this isn't lining up, I'm going to guess this is where the stud was supposed to go on the transmission side. So it's probably not going to line up no matter what, but we do have this guy over here that we're going to be able to hold on to. We also have this mounting point down here that's going to be a complete pass-through. So we have at least 3 solid points of mounting, as well as a bunch of other, you know, subpar, but they're going to work out just fine mounting points. And we also have the dowels that we're going to shove in there. So Kyle's going to tighten down these bolts right here that go from, that's going to hold the engine plate on, and then we'll go ahead and go to the next part. So he's tightening down these completely, and we're going to take them all the way down to 35 foot-pounds. And while he's doing that, I might try to squeeze in these dowels. These dowels should be pretty easy. We're just going to go ahead and do a quick measurement, how thick the transmission is, and then how thick this is, and then we're going to go ahead and put those in there at the right depth. So those dowel pins that I ended up purchasing were incorrect. So we're going to go ahead and reuse the stock ones. We looked at them, and you know what? They're going to be about the right depth. This plate doesn't add much, maybe like 1/8 of an inch, if that. So we're going to reuse the stock ones and put them back in, see if everything lines up pretty well. There's not much on that transmission really either, so we're just loosening those back up. We're going to go ahead and pound those back in. We got one started already. We just got to put the other one in right now. Good. And then we can go ahead and tighten that back down. All right, so after doing the flex plate, the transmission to engine adapter, and then the spacer here, I think we're about ready to go back in. Like I said, we reused those dowels, and we can just go ahead and turn this engine a little bit, slide her in. We got our engine leveler up here that we'll be able to utilize, making sure it's gonna go in correctly. And I think if we just go ahead and throw you guys over on the passenger side of the car, you should get a good angle of what we're doing. So let's go ahead and get set up here, see if it fits. All right, so that motor is in. Just gonna take that off. Well, something's missing here, and that's the engine because it's in there now. We'll go ahead and do a walkover or once around on it right now. The hardest thing we had on this was trying to get the transmission to bolt up to the engine. The reason why that was hard because things were kind of tweaking, and also our engine hoist wasn't long enough. So this Harbor Freight engine hoist, the arm on it was probably about a 1/2 inch short, so we had to come in through the driver's side wheel well. Worked out pretty good with turning that wheel, but still was a little difficult. But between the coming in from that side and also that engine leveler that we had on top of it, which was a lifesaver, we were able to actually manipulate it in here and get a bolt started. After we got a bolt started, we then had to make sure that those cleared. Once the engine mounts cleared and actually got on the horns correctly, we were able to lower it down, tighten up those bolts right there, and we were able to get them to kind of line up and shove those bolts through the front. After that, you can see it where it is right now. We do have a couple more belt housing bolts we do need to put in, but we will be putting those in off camera. Just this video is running a little long. That was 45 minutes of us trying to get this engine in there. Just things weren't going our way for the most part, but it's in there. I don't think it's coming back out. So let's go ahead and wrap up this video. So yeah, that is the engine now in the engine bay. Like I said, it's not come back out. Kyle, what did you think about the experience, man?
It was tough. We, like I said, we spent 46 minutes trying to get this thing tucked into bed, and it fought us most of the way, but we overcame and we got her in there.
Yeah, a couple of bell housing bolts that are in it right now too are a little bit too long, so I'm going to order some new ones, make sure that those are good. Also underneath on the torque converter going to the flex plate, pretty big gap. We're going to get some spacers for that. I'll order those. I'll take measurements of it today. I know about how much space there is between. It's about one of those little flashlight heads worth. And then we'll get those and also some longer torque converter bolts. Hopefully that shouldn't be any issue. But other than that, we finally were able to also look and see where our headers are going to be. Me and Kyle were kind of checking the fitment, and we were able to put our fist pretty much between that and any blocking point from the engine. And that's going to give us tons of clearance, and everything's going to be able to fit right through. So since we got the engine in there, I'm going to order the headers, I'm going to order the torque converter, spacers with bolts, and also a couple bell housing bolts. In the next video, we'll probably mock fit some of those if we have them in, and also move on to the next part. I think you mentioned wiring coming up.
My part's finally here. A phrase that's probably not said too often in the English language in the automotive world, which is I'm excited for wiring, but that's where I am. That's what I'm looking forward to. So I finally get to start tackling laying out the wiring and where all the modules are going to live, and I'm really looking forward to that part.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad you're doing that because I don't want to. So, like I said, we don't know what we're exactly doing on the next episode. We'll see if, what we get to and what parts come in. So, yeah, until next time, make sure to click those links down the bottom. We got the Amazon links below. Also, subscribe to our channel. Check out our shirts. We got a couple shirts out there that we introduced in the last couple episodes. And like always, make sure to watch out for the next episode. Until next time, guys. Thanks for watching.